will call the annual meeting of the Joint Local Development Finance Authority Troy Subcommittee to order. Mr. Miller, please call the roll.
Beltramini?
Here.
Sharp?
Here.
Vitale?
Here.
Huff?
Hoof. Here.
Spanos? Hoderick? Slater?
We have quorum. The first order on the agenda is to elect officers. I think we have a chair and a secretary.
We have a chair and a secretary-treasurer.
Okay. So the chair will entertain motions for that.
I move Robin Beltramini be reelected.
Second.
Mark is secretary-treasurer. Does
I
that
move
Mark be reelected.
Why don't we just put it all in the same motion? Can we do that?
The way you asked the question, I assumed individually.
No, I don't care.
Okay.
Just get the job done. Whoever is going to take over. All right, so are there any other motions from the floor? The motion is that the current officers be reelected. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. The regular meeting schedule is from last October, and we can go forward to those minutes. With the exception of Nick's name being spelled wrong, we'll get that corrected. Does anyone have any other corrections to the minutes?
Nope. Move approval. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, moving along to old business, we ask that Automation Alley come and give us an update. So we have the new COO of Automation Alley with us, Pavan Mazumdar. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Sure.
Share at will.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. I don't know if new is valid anymore.
It's true.
It's been a while, but I have some materials which you can, last time I think we didn't really have anything to share, and we make some pretty stuff at Automation Alley, so I thought it would help, so.
Thank you.
And I'll leave these for,
Terrific.
For anyone else you might want to give them to. But sort of what I will do is I will summarize the activities from the past year. We've sort of, as I mentioned the last time, we've put our focus of all our Automation Alley activities around the concept of Industry 4.0. And Industry 4.0 is the confluence of digital technologies with physical ones. So if you look at the Midwest, we're very good at physical technologies like manufacturing, but then there's this whole wave of digital technologies that are kind of washing over those activities. And without going too much into the detail, what we've realized, and this is just sort of with working with companies, is that it isn't one or the other play, it's a combination, which means that you have to be good in the new world, you have to be good at physical technologies and digital technologies. As I said before, traditionally in the Midwest, we've been very good at physical technologies. On the coasts, they're good with digital technologies. But we think that the winner of this, or the centers of influence, are going to be around companies that actually have excellence in both. And what we've also uncovered is that it's much harder to transition from digital to physical than it is from physical to digital. And we've seen that time and time again. In fact, I've done a presentation at AIAG, which is the Automotive Industry Action Group. We talked about some of our observations, and that's when someone said, well, I wonder why if this is why Tesla is having so much trouble producing. Because they're primarily a digital company, they design really well, but when it comes to scaling, which is what we do really well over here, they find it very difficult to do. So we've kind of, centered around that concept, and what we think is absolutely necessary to do is we need to create a mechanism for community learning, and we also need individualized assistance. And so we've kind of recrafted our activities at Automation Alley to address those things. So we have 3 community learning mechanisms. The one thing, the first one, and I'll draw your attention to one of the handouts here, is what we call Integrate. Integrate is our signature conference. We had it, our inaugural conference was in November of 2017, and that was a runaway success. We were expecting about 400 people, 550 showed up, and we just saw that there was a lot of demand. So Integrate 2018 is on November 14th. And Irene was at the 2017. And so this is sort of a snapshot of what you could expect at Integrate. The second set of activities is what we call the Technology and Industry Report, and that is this handout over here. So we've changed it a little bit. Last year it was called Technology Industry Report. This year it is Technology in Industry Report because we're focusing really on the application of technologies. We've also really focused, we've changed the game a little bit this year. It is a partnership with academic institutions around us. UDM has taken the lead in sort of compiling the report, but we're also working with Lawrence Tech, CMU, Wayne State. We have, let me see, Baker and MCC, OCC, they're all kind of participating, and each one of them has taken one of the sectors of the 8 sectors of the Industry 4.0 technologies, and they've created a deep dive report that talks about the state of the art in those technologies, but then also what are the action items that businesses need to focus on to become competent. So that's what we call the Technology and Industry Report, and that's really not an event. We think of it as the beginning of a process because Integrate really informs the Tech and Industry Report, TIIR is what we call it. And then the third thing that we do is every Wednesday at Automation Alley in our atrium, our 100-person atrium, we have a technology seminar focused on one of the 8 sectors. We call those the Tech Takeovers. Those are all organized by technology companies talking about one of the 8 sectors, and they're focused on knowledge sharing and thought leadership. And that just happens. So if it's a Wednesday, there'll be a tech takeover. We've had one, we've already had them all the Wednesdays in April. And we're booked, I think, till early next year. So they've been a pretty good success. And we're now in the process of testing out some live streaming technology so that we can make this available statewide. They'll still be held in Troy, but we'll make them available statewide. So that's what we call, yeah, we think so too, yeah, with a lot of demand for it too. So that's the collective. That's where, we would call it the community learning. People come in as groups and sort of figure out what they need to do. But then, at some point, every company is different. Every company has different needs. And so what we're thinking is we are already expecting individual company leaders to say, okay, you've transformed me. You've kind of, convinced me I've got to do something in my business. What's the step for me? And we are now in the process of introducing a program called ACT. ACT stands for Automation Alley Competitive Transformation. And the goal is to essentially help manufacturers and industry and physical businesses transform from the inside out by becoming more digitally capable. So the objective is to overlay a digital mindset on a physical business, which is you don't change the physical, you stay physical because that's really what your value proposition has always been. But then how do you use digital technologies to kind of overlay on top of those? That's what the ACT program is all about. So that's sort of our core, and then all the traditional services that we've had around it are all now focused on Industry 4.0. So in fact, you'll see this flyer, it says Join Automation Alley, Straight Mission to Hanover. That actually started this weekend. And Tom and Noel are over there right now. What time is it? It's probably time for them. They're probably in bed right now. They're probably tired as
6 hours different.
6 hours different, yeah. I was there last year, but we didn't actually have a trade mission.
6 to Germany.
Oh, okay.
That's right, yeah. We also have a trade mission to India coming up. And all of these trade missions are now focused on essentially that, how do you take that digital transformation, is it, how do you look at it from the standpoint of either showcasing our digital capabilities without sacrificing the physical. So we're not going to all start just becoming digital companies, but we are physical companies that are very comfortable with the digital world. Same thing with entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, which is traditionally worked with startups, is going to expand its scope to work more with all kinds of companies. We have the talent side of it, which looks at how the talent equation changes with Industry 4.0. And then defense. We're doing some defense work also focused on Industry 4.0. And that's also related to ACT. So what's really changed over the last year and a half or so is just coming around the central theme that is Industry 4.0, and then everything is really aligned. So it's one common message, but then all the tactical services around it. And yeah, these are just some brochures. We've had the Entrepreneurship 7 Cs program, which is a really big success, where we help startup companies not focus so much on capital, but focus on customers, because we figured if you have customers, then capital will come. And then this is just a brochure that kind of talks about what we do. So that's an update. I'll be happy to take questions. Yeah.
Do you expect your live streaming to be a service, or will that be a bit of a profit center for you?
Well, it's one of those, because it is a digital, so we're also thinking digitally. And one of the things that you do when you're a digital company is you leverage your information so that you can make money elsewhere. So it may not be a direct, we may have some offerings. By the way, this is all kind of, we keep testing, iterating internally, right? And that's one of the things that we actually counsel our companies to do, because you have to almost find the business model that works. The live streaming will be part of the standard registration, and the standard registration has a member fee, and then there's a non-member fee. And it may be something that is made available, online. But we almost think that there's more value in getting the attention that the live streaming content offers, because the other thing that we're doing is we're also creating virtual advisory councils, and we're adding people to it. And it's not just the local people. We have international presence in those advisory councils, because this is an international dynamic. There isn't, a local digital play. It's an international play. So what we think is that if we can offer live streaming and make that really, really inexpensive, but then get some of the thought leadership from the people that are actually participating in the live streaming, that generates more value. It's a theory. We'll test it out. We'll do everything we can to figure out what's the right way to do it. But
And the fact
yeah.
that we want to position Automation Alley as the Industry 4.0 for the entire state, and help
Exactly.
reach some of the manufacturers in the west
That's
part of
right.
the state as well as the northern
Yes.
part of the state, but
Yeah.
the nucleus is here
Yes.
at Automation
Yes.
Alley, which
Yes.
I think is very smart.
yeah, and then we are also thinking potentially of having sort of a combination, again, physical, digital. So what if we live stream the events, but then have a local panel talk about some of the content following the live stream? So now, because it's one thing to look at a webcast on your own PC, but then there's a different energy when you watch it as a group.
Absolutely.
And then you have some networking opportunities. So you can still kind of do it that way. And, everything is on the table. We'll be testing it out. We're talking to some partners, but it's like anything else. If the technology doesn't work well, that really deteriorates the user experience, and then, then you have a problem. So we want to get the technology side figured out first, and then you can play with all these different opportunities. Yeah.
It's only very interesting. It's only forgive me, I was going through some of the brochures. We're looking at the talent development component and training. Obviously, in Michigan, southeastern Michigan, we want to retain good people.
Yes.
And I know on the state level, that's a high priority. What is your role, or if any, of trying to keep that or partner up good talent
Yeah.
with good industry?
So we've done, one of the things that we did that was very successful, one of the programs was something called the TTDP, which was essentially a just-in-time training program for technology.
Right.
This is where companies said, we want to be able to do, these set of skills. And they have some people in their own organizations that they wanted to upskill very quickly. We put that program because
Okay.
what we're realizing with Industry 4.0 is it's not, what we might expect the jobs to be aren't going to be those. They're going to be completely different jobs, right?
Right.
And we have to focus more on transformational skills and everything is pointing to critical thinking. That's really the one thing that everything is pointing to, because if you look at it,
In critical thinking.
if you look at it, historically, the educational system was designed, if you look back in history, it was designed for an industrial age where we didn't have good information systems abilities. We're talking about the Victorian era, right? So we needed humans to play the role of computers. Well, that's sort of gone now. We have computers that play the role of computers.
Right.
Now what we need is the humans that can essentially look on top of the computers and do interesting things like the what-if questions, not so much tabulating information. That's not a core skill anymore. You need to do that to understand the critical thinking.
Right.
But the critical thinking piece is really what everybody is looking for. And so, it's almost like, and it's the same thing we see with ACT. ACT, when we look at ACT, the program, we're not talking about any specific technologies. We're talking about how do you, one of the elements that we talk about in the company is how do you have a learning culture in your organization. Typically, physical businesses they're not very comfortable with change, because when you change something in a physical business, it can be very expensive. On the digital side, you can change as much as you want. It's all about change. Everything is about iteration. So we have to almost change the mindset to be comfortable with change. And that is a learning culture. The second thing is looking at finance differently. Traditional physical business finance is about capital allocation and what we might call the NPV model, right? I'm going to allocate capital, I'm going to model out cash flows, but in the digital side, it's much more about I'm going to take small bets and I'm going to incrementally gain value. It's much more like options-like thinking. But here's the interesting thing. You can't move away from the NPV model. You have to keep that. You just have to overlay this options-like thinking. And then on the technology side, there are just certain things that all leaders need to be able to do, which is be able to be comfortable with data analysis, be comfortable with embedded systems, software engineering processes, and then collaborative systems internally. So when we create this ACT program, there is no ACT program. It's not for robotics, or it's not for 3D printing, or it's not for, it's ACT for digital thinking. And then what you do is you try to figure out, well, what makes sense in my business? Does a robotics play make sense, or does it a 3D printing, or is it a combination, or something like that? And it's a very similar thing back to the talent part, right? So when we talk about kids that are going in, they're still saying, I want to grow up and be this.
Right.
And we're like, that this might not be the this anymore, it'll be something else.
Right.
So we need to focus on how do you kind of create this mechanism where they just learn how to learn for life. And whatever comes their way, they'll figure it out.
Right.
And that's really, I think, where the whole talent, and we're starting to see that. We're starting to see talent becoming much more about just-in-time training as opposed to, creating a big program.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a curiosity question. It looks like last year there were 9 sectors. If I'm looking at this document right, and then it morphed to 8.
Yes.
And the 2 that morphed together, I'm thinking, are horizontal.
So, let's see.
I'm on page 9 in the document dated 17.
Yes, so systems are one of them. Let's see, which one did we? Yeah, the systems integration piece.
Right.
So what we realized is systems integration is
Yeah.
really the hub.
Okay, all right. So that was pulled out of
That was pulled out and that becomes the center.
Augmented reality and virtual reality is the same as artificial intelligence then?
No, so actually the newer ones are Augmented reality, virtual reality is what we call modeling, simulation, and visualization.
Right.
Okay, so if you match them up, yeah.
That's what I was doing.
Right.
Right.
Modeling, simulation, visualization. So that's, autonomous robots is just robotics and AI. Big data is on its own. IIoT is as it is. Advanced additive manufacturing is combined with has advanced materials added to it,
Okay.
because that goes hand in hand, especially when you're looking at composites and metals and things like that.
Right.
There's a very interesting play. Just the confluence of just those two technologies brings about all kinds of enabling opportunities. And then cybersecurity and cloud computing are essentially two sectors by themselves.
It's interesting how you segment.
Yes.
The sectors.
Now, and by the way, just since you brought it up, the modeling simulation, actually it used to be big data and AI, and robotics was separate. And just from talking to some of the partners and industry players, what we realized was that that's not how they saw it. They saw it differently. So, we kind of changed. We moved with them. But the one thing is there's always going to be 8 sectors, because Intra 9 doesn't sound good to me, doesn't Intra 7 doesn't sound good. So
I was wondering if you did it just for the name.
So we converged on the name afterwards, but I think we'll stick with 8.
Yeah.
But here's the interesting thing. It really doesn't matter whether it's 8 or 7 or 9, right? I mean, the important thing is, do you dissect it to something that makes it understandable? And then do you create some practical value out of it, right? That's really the goal. And I remember in our early, phases of this, I was actually talking to the ex-chief engineer from General Dynamics, I forget his name. And I was a little nervous because, here's the chief engineer of General Dynamics. And I said, listen, we just kind of did this because we thought this is, a good start. He says, I've been an engineer all my life, and I'll tell you one thing, it's better to have some diet than no diet. So this is a good start.
You have to separate it somehow.
Yes,
so
exactly.
It's as good as any.
Exactly. And what we validated time and again now is that companies identify themselves in these sectors. So you'll have companies that might do many different things, but they primarily put their flag around one of these sectors, especially with AI. Artificial intelligence is one of those.
Yeah.
You can't really find an artificial intelligence company that doesn't do cybersecurity and cloud, because they're just part of the game, and potentially big data.
Right.
But they will call themselves an AI business, even though they deal with big data, and big data, then it's IIoT, because it's the Internet of Things that's generating the data that they're processing.
Some of these sectors, virtually all companies must do to some extent.
Yes.
Like cybersecurity.
Of course, yes.
But then they specialize in one area.
Correct, yes. Yeah, the ones we see that tend to be the one that's sort of on its own a little bit is the additive manufacturing and advanced materials. That doesn't necessarily apply to a lot of companies, because additive manufacturing or 3D printing, it hasn't scaled up to the point where it has become part of production, except in industries like aerospace. Aerospace has really made additive manufacturing part of production. Everywhere else, it's still in the prototyping phase or in the engineering phase, in engineering space, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but everything else, and robotics, we've been using robotics, but the newer flavor of robotics is now tabletop robots and highly programmable cobots, as they call them, collaborative robots.
Very cool.
So, let me ask a question that occurs to me that this board should be interested in is, have you quantified the impact that Automation Alley has on Troy?
On Troy. That's a good question. Yeah, I'll have to take that down. Yeah. I know that we can probably figure it out because we have a lot of members that are in Troy.
Sure.
And so, we actually, one of the things we changed over
But
the
some
last
of
few.
these trade missions, you had people come to Michigan?
Oh, yeah, so,
Establish
yes, so the
buildings?
international
Are any
business,
of them in Troy?
yeah.
Yes.
Yes, some of them are.
Also, they've had companies that send a small delegation, and they use office space in Automation Alley, and some of those have ended up having offices in Troy once they expand greater than one person.
And even if they don't locate in Troy, they make original contacts in Troy so that they use them for ancillary services.
Sure.
But to your point, we haven't really quantified it. It's more of a,
Yeah, it's a good,
I think at our research department
Yeah.
of the county, because we could do economic impact.
yeah,
On any type of geographic area.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the inputs are, but you give us the inputs, and the Federal Reserve has formulas.
Right.
That they have,
Yeah.
that we can
Yeah.
get that number for you.
yeah, that's cool.
excuse me.
Just interesting. I mean, anecdotally, we know that, does it bring back the $45 per dollar that is invested right here? No, probably in Oakland County, gee whiz, yes, but right here in Troy, I don't know. So,
Yeah, I'll move forward.
I can tell you one thing, though, there isn't a U.S. Commercial Service Office around the world that does not know Kent Rogers and Automation Alley specifically. Whether that's Japan, China, India, Sweden, Germany, they know Automation Alley. So
Yeah.
that it has the altruistic value that you can't get anywhere else.
You know, again, anecdotally, I'm trying to think, it was one of the events, it was either the Global Outlook event or the NAM event. It might have been the NAM event. So we had the National Association of Manufacturers do their inaugural
State of manufacturing.
or the inaugural event for their State of Manufacturing tour
Right.
at Automation Alley, right? And so we had live streamed that event, but we had a German delegation. And it was interesting, the name of, and Tom and Noel are actually meeting with him. His name is Professor Detlef Schulke. And we didn't know who he was, but, you know, his organization is called Smart Factory DE. So we got, you know, had a little private meeting and we started talking, and very interesting gentleman. He's been around the block. He understands Industry 4.0. So we got talking, and we found out he was actually one of the people in that original group of people that coined the term Industry 4.0.
so he knows.
So he knows, and then a few weeks back, we got an email from him saying that, you know, they'd like to figure out a way to partner with Automation Alley, and he's actually going to be speaking at Integrate 2018. So it's very, very interesting, yeah. And I think part of that is because of the international business, you know, awareness that people have of Automation Alley. So it all adds up, it all just accrues, you know, yeah.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you so
much.
much.
You're very welcome.
Thanks
Yeah.
for the takeaways, too.
Sure, yeah, and I'll leave this one too.
Great.
I have plenty of these, so. All right, great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, let's do this here. All right. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You want to do that before you do a little move across Troy?
No, but I need to point to that when I report Move Across Troy.
Okay. All right.
So the Move Across Troy report is that the LDFA had budgeted funds over a number of fiscal years, and it was this number right here, this $125,000. What this means is, you know, this is what was budgeted to expend. We did not expend anything in 2017. And we have spent all those funds on the infrastructure related to the traffic signal in front of Altair. And then City Council had allocated capital funds. However, we have taken those capital funds out because Altair is looking at doing a major redevelopment. And it's a planned unit development, and we anticipate negotiating with Altair to pay for the pedestrian crossing. And I just said that in a public meeting, but
You lost
we
your
spent-
leverage.
Have we spent any of the 125?
all of it.
So, okay,
All
so
of it
the
has been
18 budget
expended.
is fully spent?
Yeah, and I always should have started saying that our fiscal year is July 1 to June 30.
So we're getting close to the
What
end of
did
the
we
year.
spend it on then?
Traffic signals.
Yeah.
To coordinate so when there is an at-grade pedestrian crossing, people can press a button and activate and stop traffic.
So that equipment is up
Yes.
now?
Yes,
It's up
it's
now.
up.
And it's also, I don't know if any of you go to the Troy Sports Center, if you're going eastbound on Big Beaver and you turn left, there's now a traffic signal there where before it was just a stop sign. So it's safer to get across.
And this is probably not relevant, but what's the 45,000, the 34, and the 32 in the out years? Is it related to
That's the
that?
budget
No,
we're
well, that's
voting on,
not-
so,
well,
yeah,
we'll
that's
talk about it when we get to the
yeah,
budget.
That's the budget we're voting on, yeah. So those signals are up,
Mhm.
so we've spent our money,
Mhm.
and we're hoping Altair will finish some of the enhancements.
Yes. We'll work
That
with
would
them.
be great.
It would be great, yeah.
Well, and there's no sense in us installing it because we don't know,
Right,
we're in preliminary talks with, during the development process.
Yeah.
And they're going to change the entrance to their building because they just are. It would be dumb. It would be improper to expend the funds right now because it'd probably just get torn out.
yeah.
Okay. What's their general timing, Mark? I know it's preliminary talk.
Yeah, it's preliminary talk. and I thought we'd be meeting on a preliminary basis 3 months ago, and we're meeting this week. So slowly but surely.
Okay. It's promising.
It's moving.
But Mr. James Scappa, the CEO of Altair, is a real visionary. He's going to develop a whole campus for their employees at that location.
Very cool.
And they're in the process of buying up a lot of businesses worldwide.
Yes, we were reading about that.
You know, and they just went public also in the past half a year.
It's all good so far. So that's the biggest update that impacts us, as far as moving across Troy.
Yep.
Our signals are up.
Yes. And our money is expended.
Yes. Okay, so would you like to move on to the budget?
Sure. I'll move on to the
2018
budget. So we'll start off with revenues. And I want to point something out. So actual revenues in 2017 were 181,000. But you start noticing, we originally budgeted 187,000 for the fiscal year we're in, but now we're estimating we're only get 160,000. What's happening is we're starting to get the full effect of the state of Michigan's tax changes, where industrial personal property now is exempt. And I don't understand it fully, but if you notice, most of our revenue has always been property taxes. Now we have state revenue sharing, EMPP, and we're projecting, see how our revenues keep going down, 107, 101, 96, that will, to make up for the lost, a portion of the lost industrial personal property, we'll get state revenue sharing to cover that. But it's not covering us whole. So the LDFA tax increment capture is reducing more dramatic than we thought. Because it was hit really bad by the recession also.
How do they calculate what the state revenue sharing is?
I don't know.
And do you think it'll be a fixed amount, or you just
We're
kind of
guessing.
took a stab at
It's
it?
a percentage, it's percentages of what was,
So it'll
what
probably be different every
depreciated,
year.
and, yeah, so
Yeah.
it should be different every year.
Yeah, and
And
with,
with new added, we'll get, a bump in that revenue sharing, but as
Right.
things would be naturally scheduled to depreciate, then that percentage goes down.
okay,
So
so,
you're probably being a little bit conservative then, and,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, we'll see. We've never gotten these funds for this body.
Right.
So, we can see that overall our revenues going out, 155, 149, 144. And so our plan, our TIF plan basically says Automation Alley gets 60% of the tax capture. It's funny. Is this tax capture or is it state revenue sharing? So it's
Technically, it's revenue sharing.
yeah, it's revenue sharing. But what our plan says is Automation automatically gets 60% off the top. You can see the revenues, we're estimating at 96,000 this year, and then next year, 92, 89, 86, so it's going down.
But you're including the state revenue sharing in that 60%.
Yeah, we did, yeah. Well, that was the intent of it. The
Yeah.
whole reason why this LDFA was created was to help support Automation Alley.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the whole point. And then so, infrastructure is the other major expenditure, and you know, this year represents the traffic signals. And so we have 45,000, 34, and 32. And what we're proposing to spend it on is Automation Alley has come to us to help them repair their parking lot. It's in pretty bad shape. I mean,
Yes, it's pretty bad.
It's nasty. It's
Like
just
every
nasty.
other road surface in this.
And then we just have minor amounts, 5,000 for tax tribunals, administrative services, 17,000. The membership fee, excuse me, is the 17,000. That's so that we become a foundation member of Automation Alley. Audit fees, and the budget's pretty simple from that standpoint, straightforward.
What happens if the ending fund balance ever were to go negative? We would just
Fund balance.
adjust on the go and spend less?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd have to.
Yeah.
Cut back.
Because there
Yeah,
is
we
a
have
limit.
to,
can't
because
really
we have no
do
kitty.
Right,
Yeah.
You can't really do that.
Yeah.
okay.
You know, that's a concern, we just, you know.
Because we've had a pretty decent sized surplus.
Yeah,
Yep, reading it up.
We're going to get close.
Yes.
Balance sheet for LDFA can't look like much, right? I mean, there's the cash.
And really, the cash comes in one lump sum about this time of the year from
Right.
the county. Yeah,
Right.
right. So the city fronts the cash for them to survive anyway, but really, we don't make our payments to Automation Alley until we know what the actual tax capture was, and we get informed by the county.
So do you need approval of the 2019 proposed budget?
It's actually a 3-year budget, so yes.
So it's for the full,
Yeah, it's for 3 years.
Well, the full 3 years, and they vary a little bit if you check your.
And this does go to city council, and they also approve it.
I'll make a motion to approve the 3-year budget.
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
In looking at our meeting schedule, the next item is in looking at preliminary act of recodified tax increment financing. Do you want to give us a brief synopsis?
The brief synopsis of that is we do a pretty good job of providing all the information that's required in this, in this new act. You know, it's about it being transparent and providing all the minutes and things of that nature. However, our chair identified that we need to update our website because we got to bring all the budgets and the minutes up to date. They're just old.
Woefully old.
And the other thing it will mean is when we have these 2 meetings a year, and since I think we will continue that, us only having 2 meetings a year, there will have to be an educational component in that according to this act. So we'll have to have automatically some summary of activities beyond what we normally do.
Madam Chair, I remember the city attorney used to give updates and give us plugs, but it's been a while.
Yeah.
It's been a great number of years.
So we can do that. It's not difficult, but we need to make sure we build it into the agenda.
Okay.
That's all. Anybody have any questions after reading the documents? On it? Maybe. We do all of that in some fashion. We do some of it really well and some of it not so well. Okay, the next item is that I ask that we move the October meeting a week later instead of October 22nd to the 29th. Absent any objection, can we do that?
Yes.
I think that's
That's all
supported
three.
by consensus.
By consensus, we will change that meeting.
As long as it's not on Halloween.
Nope, nope, 2 days before. Board member comment. Irene, you got an update for us?
I brought, fresh off the press, our annual report, for the county.
Thank you.
I wanted to share that with my fellow LDFA members.
Thank you.
Talks a little bit about all the divisions that make up Oakland County's Economic Development Department and some of the successes we had last year and some of the new initiatives that we've launched. So, wanted to share that with you.
Where's
you.
this fancy place?
It's in Ferndale.
Oh,
It's a,
It's a new brew pub, yeah.
yeah, in Ferndale.
Okay, what's the thing you're most proud of from the past year?
The thing I'm most proud of in this past year is that we hit over $1 billion in new investment. We've never hit the $1 billion mark. We had projects that we worked on with our local communities. So that was a
That's
big
very
goal
good.
for us.
That's very good, thank you. Yeah.
And our, we did a Google CS event with under Tech 248. We had 12 IT tech companies have a hands-on display at the Southfield Pavilion. We had local middle schoolers come, we had about 400 of them, and they got to actually like program a robot, work on a game that they're developing. So that was really exciting to me. I was really proud because I think we have to do a better job of connecting students with employers on the cool jobs that are available here. We can't afford to miss one person. That was my message to all those 400 6th and 7th graders is whatever your passion is, whatever you end up doing in your life, do it here in Michigan. We need you here.
Well, and they can.
Yeah, absolutely. The perception isn't there, but they can.
They can.
Those of us that are in the know, we know they can.
Yeah,
Right.
they can, so that's very cool. Other board members have any comments, anything to say? You want to take time to read the report so you congratulate?
General topical subjects out there are tariffs, and if people are, businesses, and I work with a lot of manufacturing firms, if they generally have questions about tariffs, does Oakland County have a resource?
Well, we've been partnering with our local accounting firms. They've been having these webinars, and if you have a client that's interested, we have a list of webinars and events talking about tariffs and NAFTA and what that could mean if it goes one way, what it would mean if it goes the other way, so that we can educate our companies.
Which firm is that?
We use Clayton McCurvey, Doreen Mayhew does a lot of those events. Some of the
Next
law
door
firms
neighbor.
are doing that as well. So, yeah, and
Okay.
they send us those updates so that we have that calendar of events.
And you were appointed to the U.S. Investment Advisory Council?
Yes.
Congratulations. Advising the Secretary of Commerce on foreign investment?
Yes,
Wow.
there are 19 of
Very
us
cool.
around the country. I
Congratulations.
was appointed under Secretary Pritzker, but now I continue under Secretary Ross, and we've made our recommendations. I co-chaired the workforce development with the Economic Development Director from Columbus 2020, which she's an interesting person too, because we compete a lot, especially in manufacturing projects. But it was a great experience to, it's a 2-year term, and my term finishes up the end of this year. But it was a great experience for me, and it helped, because the multinational companies that were on there were companies that have locations here in Oakland County, so it allowed me to have FaceTime with them. And I personally think Gestamp, the Spanish company that expanded here in Troy, and Mahindra, both their federal government affairs people were on that committee with me. And I guarantee some of those decisions to expand here as opposed to other states happened because of those conversations. The CEO of Gestamp told me specifically they had a much lucrative incentive package from Indiana, but because he kept hearing about everything we're doing in Michigan on workforce development and the ecosystem, he goes, I need to make that expansion there. So that all helps.
It does.
I know,
It
so
does.
we're in-
Well, congratulations.
Thank
both
you.
Personally and professionally.
Thank you.
Okay.
plus Irene gave a great talk to the Lakes Area Chamber of Commerce,
And it was a lot of
which I
fun.
was able to sit through.
I didn't bore you too much.
No, not bad. It was great.
She's good at her job.
I love what I do, and I love, the team that I work with and our local partners. I mean, we do it in collaboration with a lot of good people that care about this region and about our state and making sure it's economically dynamic going forward.
trade missions coming up for Oakland County?
Yeah, we're in Hanover, we have somebody in Hanover.
Okay, you're doing that one too.
Yeah, we're doing that one. We have somebody that went with the Detroit Regional Chamber to China. We
Okay.
have a few prospects in China. We'll be going to Italy, UK, Japan. Japan, we have 4 prospects that we're working on.
When's the Japan?
Probably September or October
This year?
this year. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
When's
These are all
UK?
yours.
When is UK?
UK is with the Netherlands, and I want to say May or June. We're going there.
I
All
have
the
2 family
time?
members working for Oakland County Japanese subsidiaries.
Oh, we have 270 of them.
And
I was,
I keep quoting that number, and
Yeah.
people are amazed.
They
That's
are.
That's incredible.
even the Japanese companies that are here are amazed
Yeah.
that there's so many of us
Right.
here, they say. Yeah, they pretty much funded the new Japanese garden that's opening at MSU Tollgate.
Excellent.
And we're now, it's at Prid, but we formed the Japanese Welcoming Committee
Yeah.
because it's our largest FDA component. So we put together all the resources in the county that help the expatriates that come to run those subsidiaries with their families. And we have people from Oakland Schools, from Oakland Community College, from Japanese Family Services on this welcoming committee. And we just put together a first resource guide for Japanese companies that are located here. And we already have a request from the U.S.-Japan Council to get a copy of it when it's printed. It's going to be a PDF on our website as well. And JETRO, which is the Japan External Trade Organization headquartered in Chicago.
Son's Japanese firm is a quarter mile from this
Oh,
new
okay.
garden. Open to the general public?
Oh, yeah, it will be. I have some flyers here. I'll pass it out.
But Tollgate?
Tollgate,
Yeah, they do, MSU does other activities there for children and stuff too.
You're welcome.
I'm going to steal 2, so.
Yes, absolutely. The sponsors, I didn't know how to fund it, so I sold cherry trees for it. And so we sold cherry trees, and the people on the back are the ones that paid $10,000 each to pay for a cherry tree. It'll have a nice little Japanese pavilion, a little like tea house type pavilion.
Outstanding.
And MSU's already, I just signed the papers on the endowment fund, and they're getting more donations now for programming of Japanese vegetation, Japanese agriculture. So it's really spun off.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? No public. I think our business here is concluded. Enjoy your summer.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good trip.